Sri Aurobindo is using Narad as a mouthpiece to give various answers to the problem of pain. At the beginning of the canto, Savitri's mother had asked, why does there have to be suffering and grief in the world? Why do these dreadful things have to happen? And he has not yet completed his answer. Particularly now, he is speaking about the great souls who come on earth to try to move evolution forward, lift humanity to another rung of possibility. And what we read last week, he says that there is something that is always trying to drag us down and distort the messages, the inspirations that come. And because of that presence, that adversary presence, there's an inner war without escape. Any one of us who commits ourselves to try and make the world a better place will have to face that adversary within ourselves. We tend to project it outside and blame other people for the things that are wrong. But this inner adversary has to be met within ourselves. So he says, this is the inner war without escape. So I will read on from there, about a page and a half, and then we will look at each line and each sentence in detail. Hard is the world redeemer's heavy task. The world itself becomes his adversary. Those he would save are his antagonists. This world is in love with its own ignorance. Its darkness turns away from the Savior light. It gives the cross in payment for the crown. His work is a trickle of splendor in a long night. He sees the long march of time, the little one. A few are saved, the rest strive on and fail. A sun has passed, on earth night's shadow falls. Yes, there are happy ways near to God's Son, but few are they who tread the sunlit path. Only the pure in soul can walk in light. An exit is shown, a road of hard escape from the sorrow and the darkness and the chain. But how shall a few escaped release the world? The human mass lingers beneath the yoke. Escape, however high, redeems not life, life that is left behind on a fallen earth. Escape cannot uplift the abandoned race or bring to it victory and the reign of God. A greater power must come, a larger light. Although light grows on earth and night recedes, yet till the evil is slain in its own home, and light invades the world's inconscient base, and perished has the adversary force, he still must labor on, his work half done. One yet may come, armored, invincible, his will immobile meets the mobile hour. The world's blows cannot bend that victor head. Calm and sure are his steps in the growing night. The goal recedes, he hurries not his pace, he turns not to high voices in the night. He asks no aid from the inferior gods. His eyes are fixed on his immutable aim. Man turns aside or chooses easier paths. He keeps to the one high and difficult road that soul can climb to the eternal's peaks. The ineffable plains already have felt his tread. He has made heaven and earth his instruments, but the limits fall from him of earth and heaven. Their law he transcends, but uses as his means. He has seized life's hands. He has mastered his own heart. The feints of nature mislead not his sight. Inflexible his look towards truth's far end. Fate's death resistance cannot break his will. Which side are we starting with? Rosa?
Hard is the world, Redeemer's inheritance. The world itself becomes his adversary. Those he would save are his antagonists. This world is in love with its own ignorance. Its darkness turns away from the Savior light. It gives the cross in payment for the brown.
Yes. The Redeemer the one who wants to save the world. This is a word that we use, that the Christians use about Christ. He is the Redeemer. He is the one who has paid the price. If you need money urgently and you don't have it, you may take some precious thing that you have and you take it to the jeweler, the pawn shop, and you ask him to give you money. And he will lend you money, but you have to pay back that money and the interest in order to redeem your precious thing, to get it, to buy it back. So there are those great souls who want to redeem this world that is suffering in the ignorance. But Narad says that their task, their work, is a very difficult one. It is hard and it is heavy. He's carrying the load of the whole world on his shoulders. And that world which he is trying to save, the world itself, becomes his adversary. Your adversary is the one whom you have to fight against. Whether it's in tennis or wrestling or in any other sphere of life, if it's a one-on-one fight. So in this case, who is fighting against the world Redeemer? It's the world himself. The people that he wants to save are his antagonists, the ones who oppose him and fight against him. And that's because this world is in love with its own ignorance. We may want to improve the world in some small ways, but we are not ready really for a very, very big change. We are not ready for that effort. There's something in human beings that is in love with the way that we are. Here he says the world is in love with its own ignorance. But somewhere else he says the whole world yearns for freedom, but it's in love with its chains. All those things that prevent us from being free. So the darkness of the world turns away from that light which the Saviour brings, the light that the Redeemer brings. The Redeemer wants to bring a crown. He wants to share his crown of freedom with everyone. But what do? Instead, we give him the cross. This is an allusion to Christ and the death of Christ on the cross. That's how humanity repays the Redeemer for the great sacrifices that he makes. Dana Lakshmi?
His work is a trickle of splendor in a long night. He sees the long march of time, the little one. A few are saved, the rest strive on and fail. A sun has passed, on your night's shadow falls.
So that great work which the world redeemers do, they can only bring a very little light, a trickle. When there's no water in the tap, you turn it on and just a few drops come out. It's splendid. It's a trickle of wonderful light and radiance, but such a little bit, and it comes, that trickle of splendor, in the long night the long darkness. And the Redeemer is aware of that. He sees this long march of time and how little has been achieved. And he knows that whatever his efforts, only a very few will really get the full benefit of it and be saved. The rest, they may struggle and try to follow, but they will fall away. They will fail. So he lives as a human being. There's a certain lifetime. When he's there, he spreads his sunlight. But when he leaves, a sun has passed. And again on earth, night's shadow falls. Martin.
Yes, there are happy ways near to God's Son, but few are they who tread the sunlit path. Only the pure in soul can walk in light.
It doesn't need to be all struggle. No. The divine grace is there. There are happy ways that can walk near to the light of the divine. But only a few people manage to walk that path. Sri Aurobindo and the Mother always recommended to us to try to follow the sunlit path. They said, we've done everything we can to make things easier for you. Don't insist on making things difficult for yourselves. But only the pure in soul can walk in light. There has to be some purification, some purity, before it's possible for us to walk the sunlit path. Mihong.
An exit is shown, a road of a hard escape from the sorrow and the darkness and the chain. But how shall a few escape release the world?
Yes. So we are shown a way out. All the great spiritual teachers have shown us a way out to become detached from the world. And there's a way to leave it, a way, if we're ready to make that effort of austerity and tapasya. No? There is a road of hard escape from the sorrow and the darkness and the chain, all the bondage. But, and people have followed that road and they have escaped. But how shall a few escaped release the world? This is the great difficulty, that spiritual seekers through the ages, some have managed to escape, but their escape has left the world much as it was before. It doesn't help to solve the whole problem. Sergei.
The human mass lingers beneath the yoke. Escape, however high, redeems not life. Life that is left behind on a fallen earth.
You can read the next two lines also.
Escape. Escape cannot uplift the abandoned race, or bring to it victory and the reign of God.
Yes. So a few can escape, but the mass of humanity lingers beneath the yoke. To linger means to remain for a long time, without moving on. So the mass of humanity is still under this heavy yoke that binds it to matter and the ignorance, and so to error and suffering falsehood. So that is not the way to redeem life. Escape, however high, whatever high road of escape you're able to take, that does not redeem life. Life is left behind on this fallen earth, unchanged. Escaping is not the way to uplift, to lift up the abandoned race. This race, the human race, that's been left. Escape cannot bring it victory. Escape can't bring to it the rule of the divine love governing the earth. For that, something else is necessary. Ganga Lakshmi?
The greater power must come, the larger light. Although light grows on earth and night, we see. Yet, till the heavy is slain in its own home, and light invades the world's unconscious base, and perish as a adversary force. He still must labor on, his work half done.
Yes. So for the victory to come, a greater power is needed than any that has so far come. And that greater power must bring a larger light. This is what Narad is telling to Savitri's mother. And he says, of course, light is growing on earth. Slowly evolution is going on. Consciousness is growing. The light is growing brighter. The night is getting less powerful. Recede means to draw back. No?
But what is the larger light? I understand, but what it means exactly, Shraddhavan?
A larger light, a greater consciousness.
Ah, okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
Light is always the symbol of consciousness.
Okay. Alors, large consciousness. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
vaster
Okay.
and more powerful. Yeah. That's going on, but until this twist at the roots of life has been slain, until it has been destroyed in its own home on those lower levels of falsehood, until that highest light invades, pours down into the inconscient base of the world.
It is even strong. Inconscient is even strong.
There's a world of falsehood, no, that we read about when we were going through book 2. So that seems to be the result of inconscience. What the inconscience does is to it means we are subject to the dominance of matter. No? So our mind power is not as free as it would be if it were not in a physical body. Our life power is not as free and powerful as it would be if it were not in a human body here on the material earth. Even the power that's in the body itself is so much, it has so much more potential, but it can't realize that because of this hold, the dominance of matter. That's the inconscient base. And the light has to come down and make that base of matter fully conscious before the full transformation can happen. But as a result of the unconsciousness, naturally we have limited consciousness, and our limited consciousness is subject to error. To err is human. We make mistakes. We can't help it because we don't have that larger light. We only have our little lights. And because of that, because we are subject to error, there's a possibility for real perversion, twisting of the life impulses. And that leads to falsehood. That leads to something which becomes really opposed to the light. It's not just that it has difficulty following the light or seeing the light. It doesn't want to see the light anymore. It clings to its darkness and it wants to make everything dark. And there's delight at every level of manifestation. But on that level, that darker, lower level, there are things and beings and forces that take delight in falsehood. That's the evil. That's what has to get slain in its own home. The home of evil is the world of falsehood, yeah? Which can only exist because of the inconscience, but that is not in matter. It is in the lower levels of life. Yeah? So that adversary force, that enemy opponent force, has to die, it has to perish. It will perish when it's fully illumined. No? It will either perish or be dissolved, or it will convert. So until that has happened, he, the Redeemer, he will have to go on working, because his work has only been half done. So the avatars have to come again and again and again and again. And each time something is done, but not the full victory. So then Sri Aurobindo, I think this is a late addition. We know that this canto is the last canto that he was working on in 1950. Now he speaks about somebody who may come in the future, who has a greater power. Leila, would you read?
One yet may come armored, invincible. His will immobile meets the mobile hour. The world's blow cannot bend that victor head. Calm and sure are his steps in the glowing light. The goal recedes, he hurries not his pace. He turns not to high voices in the night. He asks no aid from the infernal gods. His eyes are fixed on his immutable end.
Yes. One yet may come, still in future, this one may come. This one who is armored, very powerfully protected, and invincible. He can't be conquered or defeated. This one, his will is immobile. It doesn't change. And it's meeting the mobile hour. In time, everything changes. But that will, that one will, is fixed. All the things that the world can do, the cross, the scaffold, the stake, the fire, all the world's blows cannot bend that victor head. This one is supremely powerful. He is endowed with the power of victory. So he's not going to bend his head in defeat. So his steps are calm and sure, even though the night seems to be growing darker and more intense. He sees that the goal, the aim towards which he is going further and further away than perhaps he had seen it, or some obstacles have come in the way. The goal is further away. But that doesn't make him hurry up his steps, your pace, it's your step. He keeps going at the same steady pace forward. He turns not to high voices in the night. There may be powers there that are calling and making suggestions, but he doesn't pay any attention to them.
The goal is not fixed.
The goal is fixed, but the circumstances, the mobile hour, may change things. If you want an example, we can say that Sri Aurobindo was approaching his goal in 1938, and then the Second World War intervened, and he and the mother had to concentrate all their efforts on ensuring the defeat of the Nazis. And she has said that for 4 years they were not able to concentrate on their goal, so the goal seemed to go further away. And we don't know what Sri Aurobindo has seen towards the end of his life in terms of his goal. No? He was very sure. He said, I know that it's inevitable, but the achievement of it might have seemed to go further away than it had appeared before.
The time of realization.
Yes. Yes. So he doesn't ask for any help from the inferior gods. If we want to get something done, and we can take the help of vital gods or mental gods, no? But he will not do that. He relies on the pure, supreme power. He doesn't ask any help from those inferior powers. His eyes are fixed on his immutable aim. So the goal may recede, but his will doesn't change. His will doesn't change. He knows what he wants to achieve. Joel.
Man turns aside or chooses easier path. He keeps to the one high and difficult road. That soul can climb to the eternal peaks. The ineffable plains already have felt his tread. He has made heaven and earth his instruments, but the limits fall from him of earth and heaven. Their law he transcends, but uses as his means.
You can read the next line also.
He has seized life's hands. He has mastered his own heart.
Yes. So human beings, if things get too difficult and if the goal recedes, they may turn aside and say, yes, I give up. Or we choose easier paths. But that one keeps to the one high and difficult road, the only road that can climb really to the peaks, the transcendent peaks, the mountain summits of the eternal. In fact, those ineffable plains, those plains which can't be put into words, those highest planes of existence, have already felt his tread. He has been there. He has mastered those highest levels. And for his work, he has made heaven, those higher levels, and earth his instruments. He's using them. But he is not limited by them. The limits fall from him of earth and heaven. He is not bound by the limitations of earth or even the limitations of heaven. He transcends their law, but he uses them. He uses earth and heaven as his means for his work. And he has seized hold of the hands of life, and he has mastered his own heart. He's in control of himself, and he's in control of the life forces.
You see, he here,
This is this one yet may come. Who is he? I think he is the incarnate transcendent, if we can say that. Sri Aurobindo doesn't say, but he says that he has, the ineffable planes have felt his tread, and he has made heaven and earth his instruments. He's not limited by their laws. He transcends them. Piero, you like to read?
The things of nature mislead not his sight. Inflexible is look towards truth's fire. Fate's death resistance cannot break his will.
Yes. You know this word feints? Feints, it's kind of tricks, pretenses. Actually, it comes from fencing. You know the sport of fencing? The antagonists, they fight with swords, and they just have to touch the body armor of their opponent. And in order to be able to do with the tip of their sword. So in order to be able to do that, they pretend to go one way, and then when the opponent reacts to that, they will catch him. So it's a misleading move.
feign is verb form is feign, no? The verb form of it.
To feign, to pretend, which has a different spelling. To feign, there's a G in it, F-E-I-G-N. But this is the movement, you know, the tricks, the misleading movements. But he's not misled by them. He's looking always towards the truth, inflexible. Inflexible can be a negative word. You know, if somebody's very inflexible, stubborn, you can't get them to adapt. But what is inflexible here is the dedication to truth and the aim of truth, however far away it is. And the resistance of fate. We may wonder what fate is really, but fate is what seems to be fixed, which is also inflexible, that doesn't change, destiny. Fate's death resistance. Fate doesn't listen to anybody's hopes or wishes or prayers, and sometimes it resists us absolutely, but that will not break his will. Mahalingam.
The dreadful passages, the fatal path, invaluable his soul, his heart unslain. He lives through the opposition of Earth's powers and nature's ambushes and the world's that.
Yes. So we read about King Asvapati passing through those dreadful passages and fatal paths. No? The nature is troubled, but the soul is invulnerable. It can't be wounded or harmed. And the will of his heart is unslain. It is not destroyed. He lives, he continues to live through all the opposition, the resistance, the enmity of the powers of matter, of earth, and the ambushes of nature. You know this word? No? Somebody lies in wait. Animals of prey will stalk and then jump out and catch their prey unawares. Or guerrilla fighters in the mountains, they will ambush the cavalry as it goes through the narrow gorge. And the world's attacks. He continues. These things cannot slay him. Gomsun.
His spirit stature transcending pain and bliss. He plunges evil and good with calm and equal eyes.
You can read the next two lines also.
He too must grapple.
Yes, grapple.
Grapple with wriggling sphinx and plunge into the long obscurity.
Yes. So the stature, the height of his spirit, your stature is how tall you are. That goes beyond pain and bliss. This is the ideal which the Gita puts before us, that we can be calm and detached from both pain and bliss. Because he's detached from pain and bliss, he can also face evil and good with calm and equal eyes. We are attracted by good and repelled by evil, but he has this calm equality which can face everything with the same steadiness and the same inflexible will. But although he's such a great and powerful being, he too must grapple with the riddling sphinx. To grapple means to get hold of and fight with. This is one of, I think, 4 references to the Sphinx in Savitri. We know the Sphinx from, of course, there's the Egyptian Sphinx, this enigmatic figure in the desert, which has a lion's body and a man's head. But the Greek Sphinx is different. It also has a lion's body and claws and tail, but it has the wings of a bird and the face of a woman. It's a female power. And in the stories, she waits for travelers, for pilgrims, people who are traveling in a desolate place where the road is narrow between rocks. And there she challenges them. She asks them questions, riddles. And if they can't answer the riddle, she destroys them. But if you can answer the riddle, she gets destroyed. If you can find the answer to her riddle. So this is obviously the symbol of something in our existence that poses to us questions that mean life and death to us. The wording of the riddles is there in the tales, but it actually doesn't matter what the wording is. These sphinxes, this riddling sphinx who meets this great one, he has to find out the answer. He must be able to answer her questions, because these are the existential questions. And the Sphinx is life itself, no? Or its existence itself. When Sri Aurobindo mentions the Sphinx, in one case it is the goddess of the greater life. She is a Sphinx that looks up to a hidden sun. So the light of consciousness that will give the answer to her question, which she doesn't know the answer to herself. No? It's on a higher level. The riddle of life can't be solved by the life consciousness. It needs a higher consciousness. In other places, he speaks of the golden Sphinx, the Sphinx on the highest level, on the overmind or supramental level, there's a Sphinx. And there's this grey, riddling nether Sphinx on the lower levels of life. So all these are aspects of the existence that we face, and we have to be able to find the answer. So he too has to face that, wrestle with that riddling Sphinx, and to solve the riddle he's trying to solve, he has to plunge, he has to dive down into her long obscurity. This is the Sphinx of the lower levels of unconsciousness. Alice.
He has broken into the unconscious depths that veil themselves even from their own regard. He has seen God's slumber shape these magic worlds.
So he's gone down into that dark obscurity, long obscurity. He's gone down right into the inconscious depths. Everything, all the marvels are there potentially, but they are all hidden. Even those wonders that are there, they are not aware of themselves. That's what the inconscient is. So he's seen as if God asleep, shaping these magic worlds, all this enchantment of the world, of the material worlds and the subtle worlds. That's as if been done in slumber by a sleepwalker power.
That means the slumber has also got some powers.
Dreams, no? In slumber we dream. We create forms, subtle forms. Yes. Actually, the inconscient, he says somewhere, I think I've spoken about it before, it has all the powers of the superconscient, but it's all working unconsciously, as if in trance or in sleep or dream. You'll read, Bhavana?
He has watched the dumb god fashioning matter's frame, dreaming the dreams of his unknowing slave, and watched the unconscious force that dim the stars.
So this is what Sri Aurobindo himself has done. No? He's gone into these depths and seen how everything is working. So he says, one yet may come who has done all this, who has watched the divine unable to express itself except in matter, shaping, fashioning, shaping this frame of matter, dreaming the dreams of its unknowing sleep, the subtle forms that will manifest materially. And he's watched the unconscious force, the force of evolutionary nature that's built the stars. Bärbel.
He has learned the unconscious workings and its law. Its incongruent thoughts or effects. Its hazard race of impulse and idea. Chaos of its mechanical impulses. Its random course. Its viscous force and fear. Misleaders of the wounded listening soul.
So this is how the inconscient works. There's a kind of law there. There are thoughts there, but they are incoherent, like the kind of thoughts that sometimes come to us in sleep. No? They're not connected, there's no logical order, there's no clarity. And there's repetitive, rigid acts of matter. It's hazard wastes of impulse and idea. Hazard means by chance, without rhyme or reason. And these are like desert spaces. There's impulses and ideas, fruitless. The chaos, the disorder of its mechanic frequencies, the vibrations that are going on just mechanically. It's random calls. It calls you here and there for no particular reason. It's whispers, it's suggestions that may be true, but they may be misleading, they may be falsely true. They are misleaders of the soul. The soul is listening, but it's hooded, disguised at that level of the inconscient, and so it gets misled, led astray. So who's next? Bärbel, did you read? The Suresh you will read last.
All things come to its ear, but nothing
Abides.
All rose from the silence, all goes back to its flesh.
Next two lines.
Its
somnolence
founded the
universe.
Its
obscure
waking makes the old sin vain.
Yes. So this it is the inconscient. No? It hears everything, but it doesn't retain anything. To abide means to stay, to remain for some time. It hears everything, but nothing remains. In one ear and out the other, we say. It doesn't makes no impression, has no effect. Everything has risen from its silence, everything material, and it seems as if everything material will go back into its silence. Its somnolence, its sleepy state, somnolence. Somnus is the Latin word for sleep. So somnolence is sleepiness, has based the universe. It begins to wake up. up, it wakes up in the lower forms of life, and then a bit more, and a bit more, and a bit more, even in mind. But this waking up process of the inconscient seems to make the world, all this world, without meaning, in vain, useless. What is this? Unless, like that one, we can see the significance of what is happening. So we'll stop there for today. Very, very powerful lines. Hard is the world redeemer's heavy task. The world itself becomes his adversary. Those he would save are his antagonists. This world is in love with its own ignorance. Its darkness turns away from the Saviour light. It gives the cross in payment for the crown. His work is a trickle of splendour in a long night. He sees the long march of time, the little one. A few are saved, the rest strive on and fail. A sun has passed. On earth night's shadow falls. Yes, there are happy ways near to God's Son, but few are they who tread the sunlit path. Only the pure in soul can walk in light. An exit is shown, a road of hard escape from the sorrow and the darkness and the chain. But how shall a few escaped release the world? The human mass lingers beneath the yoke. Escape, however high, redeems not life, life that is left behind on a fallen earth. Escape cannot uplift the abandoned race or bring to it victory and the reign of God. A greater power must come, a larger light. Although light grows on earth, and night recedes, yet till the evil is slain in its own home, and light invades the world's inconscient base, and perished has the adversary force, he still must labour on, his work half done. One yet may come, armoured, invincible. His will immobile meets the mobile hour. The world's blows cannot bend that victor head. Calm and sure are his steps in the growing night. The goal recedes, he hurries not his pace, He turns not to high voices in the night. He asks no aid from the inferior gods. His eyes are fixed on his immutable aim. Man turns aside or chooses easier paths. He keeps to the one high and difficult road that soul can climb to the eternal's peaks. The ineffable plains already have felt his tread. He has made heaven and earth his instruments. But the limits fall from him of earth and heaven. Their law he transcends, but uses as his means. He has seized life's hands. He has mastered his own heart. The feints of nature mislead not his sight. Inflexible his look towards truth's far end. Fate's deaf resistance cannot break his will. In the dreadful passages, the fatal paths, invulnerable his soul, his heart unslain, he lives through the opposition of earth's powers and nature's ambushes and the world's attacks. His spirit's stature transcending pain and bliss, he fronts evil and good with calm and equal eyes. He too must grapple with the riddling Sphinx and plunge into her long obscurity. He has broken into the inconscient's depths that veil themselves even from their own regard. He has seen God's slumber shape these magic worlds. He has watched the dumb God fashioning matter's frame, dreaming the dreams of its unknowing sleep, and watched the unconscious force that built the stars. He has learned the inconscient's workings and its law, its incoherent thoughts and rigid acts, its hazard wastes of impulse and idea, the chaos of its mechanic frequencies, its random calls, its whispers falsely true, misleaders of the hooded listening soul. All things come to its ear, but nothing abides. All rose from the silence. All goes back to its hush. Its somnolence founded the universe. Its obscure waking makes the world seem vain.